Oh, great to be here with you on this Wednesday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you're making us a part of your day. So much to get to here on the show. We'll hear from Brooks Austin, Dogs Daily on SI. We'll look at the latest with Georgia. Also, how does the recent changes in college football, 12-team playoff, the name, image, likeness coming around the corner, and also the Supreme Court decision, how does that affect Georgia here in the near future and certainly in the distant future as well. Also, Chris Dominos, 680 The Fan, Braves Radio Network, will join us. We'll look at the Braves' chance to win a series tonight. Also, look at the ridiculousness that is the pitching crackdown on the Stickum and the spider tack and all that kind of stuff that's going on out there as well. And it really turned into a clown show already in Major League Baseball. So we'll get to that. Who are we undervaluing here early on in college football and more? So plenty to get to here on the show, Ben. And last night, the Braves get a 3-0 win over the Mets. Chance to win the series with a win tonight. At the very least, even series, even if they lose, but a chance to win the series tonight, potentially get it down to 3 games in the East. And they've gone now 18 innings against this Mets team without giving up a run. So maybe some signs of positive traction here for Atlanta.
No, I agree, Kevin. I think when you talk about this Braves team, something that we talk about, I mean, nobody expected them to win game 1, right? Even if it was a doubleheader, you had to just, hey, let's get this game over with as soon as possible. You look at what Jake DeGrom is doing. But since then, I mean, to get – I know last night was impressive, but to win 1-0, in game 2, these are type of things that aren't happening, as often as we give it credit for in baseball. And they won last night, and it's all about keeping pace right at this point, right? Not letting trying to keep 3 games out, trying to chip away at that lead every single day, when you get a chance to. But I was very, very impressed about the Braves last night. They seem to be understanding, not saying they have it, and we always speaking for them. They seem to be understanding the fact that they got to be chipping away at this lead, trying to find their stride. Because once again, this break, I'm not taking away from any other team, but we forget that the Braves haven't had Soroka all year. You talk about, you talk about, what went on when obviously, Marcell Ozuna. And I just think that when you look at all the different things they've dealt with throughout the course of the season, to only be 3 games back in a division that's going to probably come down potentially to the last week of the season, which makes baseball, the 100-something games, irrelevant when you say, well, dude, it's still going to come down to the last week. I give a lot of credit to this Braves team because if you look at what you thought your starting pitching would be at this point, it's not. When you look at who you got in your, when you look at who you got in your lineup, who you thought it was going to be, it's not. Yet, you're still playing well. So I give this Braves team a lot of credit. I give Stitt a lot of credit. And Kevin, dare I say, they found a way to stay competitive and close in an NL East that is still going to come down, to these maybe the last week of the season. But still, pre All-Star and post All-Star, it's definitely going to be different. But I like what the Braves are doing thus far.
I think you're seeing some guys step up in their roles. BJ, Ronald Acuña's won 2 games with a solo homer. Dansby Swanson hit a homer last night. That was basically all the runs was his 3-run homer. And then you see guys like Charlie Morton. Finally, I know people will say Charlie Morton's second-half pitcher traditionally. He pitches much better post All-Star break. Well, here getting close to the All-Star break, last couple of starts, he's been really, really good. And again, I don't think anybody thinks it's a shutout one-hitter every time he goes on the mound, but it's been just significantly better the last couple of times out for Charlie Morton.
You're right. Morton was outstanding last night. And aside from that, to your point, the last couple of outings, he's been really good. And I've been critical of Charlie Morton at times this year, but he has become one of the best pitchers in the National League over the last 3-4 goes, Kevin. And right now he is 7-3. So he's gotten you 7 wins when he's been out there. And his ERA is down to 3.68, which is good. And one thing that really caught my attention last night, and I don't know if you guys have noticed it, but I haven't traditionally viewed Charlie Morton as a strikeout pitcher. Normally he's a pitch to contact pitcher and has success with that, but 11 strikeouts last night. So that was something that I thought was impressive as well. But Ben, I agree with you. Look, just when it feels like the season's starting to slip away and you're looking around and it's 5, it's 6, it's 6.5, they find a way to make some significant progress. And last night's win was really important. Right now, you've not allowed a run in 18 consecutive innings. You've only allowed 4 runs in 30 innings. Now, maybe you have some of a correction market-wise tonight, but I think this should be a team that takes the field with confidence, with belief, and with a lot of momentum right now, Ben.
Yes, and I'm not saying the Braves are going to win against the Grom. That is not what I'm saying. But we look at the fact that it was some errors in that game, and it's not like it was a blowout. It was 4-2. I mean, and everybody expected them to not, get it done. But I do think that when you have guys, the whole stepping up in baseball is always going to be different because guys are getting quality starts hopefully for the postseason. So if you talk about a Charlie Morton, Ian Anderson, I mean, he pitches well every time, seeming that he's on the mound. I think you're getting guys some quality starts. And I will say this, Kevin, it's not being talked about. Outside of one error, Austin Riley has really looked good at third base. Like, he's really showing you that, look, this is what I'm here for. I know I got moved around as my rookie season, but he's really showing a lot of promise. So when you look at what guys needed some quality starts, and you wish it wasn't this way, but no sport, I don't think in pro sports has to adjust more to baseball. I mean, it literally adjusting every single day. And I give Snit a lot of credit for being able to have guys ready to step up. I mean, Charlie Morton didn't think he would be in this position this early or be called upon, but seems though every time they call upon him, he seems to be getting it done. But to not have a run scored in 18 innings in baseball, I mean, it ain't like we got some Cy Young winners on the mound right now, but they are looking good. And I mean, you'll always take the win no matter how you get there.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about that as the Braves get ready for the Mets tonight, finishing up that series in New York, but also the start of Hawks and Bucks, game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals. And we've talked about it plenty, BJ and Ben. Complete house money the Hawks are playing with here with an interim coach. They've not been here, but just a couple of three times in their Atlanta history before to the Eastern Conference Finals, and you're playing with a lot of confidence. You just beat the number 1 seed in the 76ers. Now you go up against a Milwaukee Bucks team. Giannis, you know what he can do, but does the rest of that team scare you the way maybe you were supposedly looking at the 76ers and some of the teams you've played to this point?
I think Chris Middleton is a guy that will be difficult to match up with, and he's a real dynamic scorer, can shoot from outside, has the mid-range game, can attack the basket. I think if you're Atlanta, you have to be aware defensively, not only against Giannis, who's one of the best players in the world, but I think Chris Middleton as well. But going back to your point about Kevin, hey, just have fun, don't worry about expectations. I think that's key as well. At last check, Milwaukee is favored by 8.5 points tonight. That's a pretty large line for an Eastern Conference Finals game. So I think around the country, people are still overlooking you. People are still expecting you to, I guess, have a couple of bad games and be out. And I think if you're on that Hawks roster, if you're Trae Young, if you're, Clint Capella, that should only motivate you that, okay, we just beat the 1 seed right after we won in New York, and people still think we're a fraud. People still don't think we can do it. So I think if I'm Atlanta, I know some coaches say we don't worry about that stuff. I'm talking about it. I'm embracing it. The country doesn't think we're legit. Let's go out there and show them that we are once again.
I know that everybody's going to be saying, is this the team that finally, is this a team from Milwaukee that finally helped them get over the hump to get to the finals? And I know we're talking about Giannis's legacy, the Milwaukee Bucks legacy. I think you are the Atlanta, Hawks. You're fighting for history because as we talked about it, you don't have much of a history. So everything that's being done right now is to get you, and put you in a position, Kevin, like one Eastern Finals win in their history. And I just think that, BJ, that may never go away, right? I mean, it's like defense for the Falcons. No matter how good the defense is or isn't, they're not going to think they're that good because that's not what we used to with a Falcons, with a Falcons defense. When it comes to the Hawks organization, it's, they'll lose this one. Well, they beat the number 1 team in the East in Philly. They beat one of the best upstarts this year in New York. Now you getting Giannis. Do I think Giannis is a better player than Embiid? No. But is he a problem? Yes, but so is Trae Young. And so is Trae Young and the chemistry of these young Hawks versus the world's darling, in the Milwaukee Bucks. We'll see what happens.
Well, I think the playoffs remaining are just very interesting in terms of legacies that are out there. Chris Paul, can you get it to a finals? Can you win one? The Hawks. To me, when you talk about who's got the least riding on it, it's Atlanta. Right? It's the Clippers. You are the stepchild of the LA Lakers, right? That's why you brought Kawhi Leonard there so that the Clippers could become as relevant as the Lakers in their own building. And then you've got Giannis, who, again, you listen to the talking points around Giannis. Giannis can be an MVP. Giannis can play great in the regular season. But what do they say? Oh, you'll never get Milwaukee to the finals. It's Milwaukee. Like, who cares? And now they're on the precipice of potentially trying to do that if they can get by the Hawks. To me, the Hawks have the least tenuous road in terms of pressure to win. It's the Hawks. Like, that's the one thing you can say is like, dude, it's Atlanta. And you say that not in a respectful way, right? It's Atlanta. They don't do this. They've been to the finals, 6 years ago, Eastern Conference Finals. They got swept. Prior to that, it was the 60s before they've been to an Eastern Conference Finals. I mean, there's no history to speak of, really, with Atlanta. So they haven't had that good player that just couldn't quite get there. I mean, they've had a collection of players. I think even when that starting five all were the all-star starters, BJ, I think people thought they were a good team. We're like, I mean, is this a team of five just great players? No, they're five good players that play really well together. So I think this Atlanta team plays loose. I think Giannis and the Bucks have it on him to say, can you actually get to a NBA Finals through Milwaukee? Is that possible? I think there's pressure there for him as an MVP to go out there and get that done as well.
And even if you just look at it, not historically, but through this season, right? The LA Clippers probably expected to be here. The Milwaukee Bucks probably expected to be here. And I know a lot of people view the Suns as sort of a new contender, and understandably so, but they won over 50 games this year. So the Suns were one of the best, hottest teams during the regular season for the entire stretch of the NBA regular season, whereas Atlanta, a couple of months into the regular season, you were looking around going, where are we going to be in the draft lottery? So even amongst these four teams, not all of which are traditional NBA powers, the Hawks are still, through the metrics of this season, kind of the outlier. So look, man, you're looking around, you're an 8.5-point underdog. That is a large line in a game like this. I'm embracing it. I am looking around, if I'm Trae Young, saying, guys, nobody believes in us. Nobody cares. Nobody thinks we can do it. And I'm letting that fuel me.
If you're Nate McMillan, you're saying to yourself, all we got is in this room, and that's all we need. I mean, it's less to do with the Hawks and more to do with pro sports in Atlanta, right? That's just how people do. I mean, did the Braves supersede expectation in a COVID-driven stricken season last year? Yep, but they still got there and they lost to the Dodgers. So nobody's gonna be like, oh, okay, it's who they lost to. I think if you the Bucks, people giving the Bucks all this pub based off of what? I mean, if Atlanta don't got a storied history, neither do Milwaukee. I mean, we talk about them like their history is storied right now. So I get it. It's because it wouldn't matter who the Hawks is playing. It ain't because it's the Bucks. Because they said this about Philly. Said it about the Knicks. So because we didn't see the Hawks being in the Eastern Conference Finals, how many other teams are doing it with an interim coach? I'll wait. I'm just saying this Hawks team is very, very dangerous, and we still have not seen them play their best game. I hope they save it for this series, because if they do, they're gonna be a problem for this Bucks team.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that as we go throughout the show today as well, counting down towards game one of the Eastern Conference Finals. Also, Braves and Mets finish up their series tonight. Speaking of baseball, it was a wild night last night, and we're only 2 days into this new rule, checking out the pitchers. We'll chat with Chris Domino, 680 The Fan, the Braves Radio Network. When we come back, it's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you here, 3 and Out on this Wednesday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Braves a winner last night, finishing up against the Mets. We've got a lot to get to in regards to baseball, and joining us here to help break down some of the things that have happened just this week in baseball from 680 The Fan, the Braves Radio Network. Chris Domino joins us here on 3 and Out. Chris, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well, fellas. How are you guys?
I'm doing fantastic, and I know baseball said this week they were going to crack down, and it took all of a couple of days to turn into a complete clown show out there. Is this going to continue, you think, with the pitchers trying to put on display that they think this is ridiculous?
Well, yeah, it's going to be interesting because I think the other thing that we found out last night is the manager's challenge could be the thing that really drives guys crazy. With Scherzer and Joe Girardi, then you got a manager yelling at a pitcher after he basically almost took his pants off to prove he wasn't doing anything. So, yeah, it's not going to get any better. And the other thing that I don't think anybody's really considering is personality of umpires is going to come into play again. There are certain guys that are going to want to be Wyatt Earp. They're going to tell you, I'm standing in the middle of the dirt road, come one, come all. I think there are going to be other umpires that don't want anything to do with it. And I honestly believe that there are going to be gentlemen's agreements between certain managers. They're just going to say, I'm not challenging. Good. Whatever the umpires want to do, let's not do anything else on top of that for a couple of reasons. Maybe they have a couple of guys who, sort of still want to do something. Maybe they're just a little bit fed up with the idea, and I would be too, that this has started in the middle of the year. None of this really makes any sense. And the thing that bothers me, and I'm glad Scherzer said it because I said it last week, where's Rob Manfred? Where's the press conference? And I don't mean a memo. I don't mean a press release. Where's Rob Manfred, the commissioner of all, talking about this? Because he hasn't. I can't stand when these guys go MIA. You want to be Commissioner Kick-Ass and come up with all these rules, you have to answer to it. And as far as I can tell, Rob Manfred hasn't done that yet.
Is this sustainable for the long term? I mean, is this something that baseball views as kind of a fixture moving forward, or are they hoping to prove a point and correct a problem potentially in half a season, so to speak?
I think they want to say we're going to come out of the gate harder than there will be down the road. Now, I'm going to tell you the other thing that I don't think is talked about enough, and it's ridiculous. It's sort of like all-star balloting. When I don't understand all-star balloting, phase 1, phase 2, who votes, then you don't vote. Then there's 4.5 pages. Like a couple of weeks ago, I printed it out just to hold it up on camera and make fun of it. All-star balloting is supposed to be this complicated. Well, set of rules I'm trying to do is AA, who have a 500-page rule book when you only need 2 pages. It's like they've taken Major League Baseball over with this idea that we have to put more in so nobody can actually find a loophole or thread. I'd like to think this is the initial look at us. We're going to really, really make sure that you guys don't do anything, and there'll be a back off. But the problem is, and I could have a problem with Rob Manfred, and I do, I have the same problem with Tony Clark on the player's side. Where is he during all this? And what's going to happen, because much like last year during the COVID stuff, with the collective bargaining agreement coming, they're going to be fighting in the middle of the street. I kept telling them last year, don't fight in front of the kids. It's the one thing you sort of realize as an adult. Don't fight in front of the children. These guys, they want to go to Times Square and duke it out for this collective bargaining agreement, and this is absolutely related to that as much as it is to anything else.
And Chris, I mean, right now that the pitches are up. I mean, the spin on the ball, because we got these great cameras and we can see that thing there is spinning. But how much of this is just baseball in general? I get they're gonna start with DeGrom 2 days ago because obviously he's arguably the best player in baseball right now. But I kind of what BJ said, where does it end? Because what if guys just start mashing, all these home runs? Do they start checking everybody's bat before they go out there and hit? I understand they're trying to make it look like they're trying to clean up the league, but isn't it just what pitchers do?
So I'm sorry, you were breaking up. I didn't really catch the whole thing. One more time.
No, I was just saying, when you think about what's going on, the pitchers are up right now. When you look at the fact that they're trying to kind of clean up, I guess what's going on with, guys potentially having substances on their hands. But, I mean, isn't it just what baseball players do? I understand you don't like all these, no-hitters being thrown this year. But do you see an end game to this nonsense?
Well, look, at the end of the day, they want to create offense. All the stuff they've taken away over the years with shifts and analytics and the three outcome stuff is not good for baseball. I'm going to tell you the other thing that happened is Theo Epstein, who's out of the game sort of officially, I think he's working as a consultant. He said, and I quote, "I apologize for being a part of this. We've created a baseball game that's not a baseball game. And when you have more strikeouts than hits, like hits, singles, doubles, triples, and homers, you've got a game that's not as exciting. When you have shifts and you have players complaining about it, whether they have a right to or not, it doesn't matter. What they're trying to do is they're trying to take away, and I'm documented, in April, probably 3 weeks into the season, I saw a lot of 59-footers. And I said at that point, look, they got a new baseball. They've admitted that. They tried to, pull back a little bit of the juice on the baseball, but they don't know what to do with it. Pitchers don't know what to do with it. They don't know if the mud works. They don't know if they're going to have to grip it harder, better. So I saw 59-footers, and I absolutely put two and two together and said, these guys are putting stuff on their hands, and they're snapping off curveballs. It's 97 up, 59 feet down into the dirt. It's impossible to hit. It's harder to hit in baseball now than it's ever been. That's a fact. I think they're trying to now police it in a way that they've never really thought they had to, even though they did it on their own. Look, I think after the strike, I think the baseball was as used as players. I think there are times that they can tell me, well, it's just the inconsistency of the consistency of making baseballs. That's ridiculous as well. But yeah, they are trying to, with the horse 3 miles down the road, they're trying to lead it back to the barn so they can create a game that's more conducive to watching. The problem is, the game has turned into an even slower because of whatever the amount of checks is going to be. The stupid rule of 3 batter minimum, the stupidity of the DH, even more stupid than it ever is when you brought it back to, where you took it away from the National League this year. None of it makes sense. They're not creating a better atmosphere to enjoy the game. And I'm not sure what this end game is other than to let the balls be in play. They're going to find something wrong with that. I joke, the next thing is going to be velocity. If you throw a pitch over 96 miles an hour, it's going to be a ball. Because they're really going to start to control things and put the ball in play. They've got to stop all the high heat. They've got to stop the stuff that breaks down heart below knees because of what they believe is grip and pack.
Chris, I know we kind of did this some with home runs back in the day. Where do you think we as fans and the media will keep that mental list of, hey, well, we got spin rate data out there. Okay, yeah. We pretty much know you were cheating, even though you didn't say you were cheating. Kind of like we did, you're probably juicing because you had a career high in home runs by 20 all of a sudden at the age of 36. Are we going to keep that mental checklist on all these guys of who was a dominant pitcher that all of a sudden is probably not so dominant and you probably were doing a little something?
Yeah, look, there's going to be speculation. There's going to be numbers driven. There's going to be accusations that it's numbers driven. No doubt. I think we're over the whole idea of trying to believe that all of these numbers are holy. I don't think anybody believes the numbers are holy anymore. I think baseball used in a good way, lived on the numbers, lived on the history, lived on it. 60 feet, 6 inches, it's been 90 feet. But the game for 150 years changed. It didn't used to be expensive. If you hit a fly ball, it was an out, and a guy scored, it wasn't a sacrifice fly, it was an out. You had a plate appearance, and you were 0 for 1. So people kind of forget that we've been moving the line, moving the goalpost forever, but it will be easy to say, I'll give you another one. I had a guy tell me when all this, the whispers of this started, he said, watch how many guys go on a 10-day IL, because they're going to need a couple of days off, not pitching, to figure out what to do, what to use, how not to get caught. And I thought that was really interesting that somebody who played the game for a long time said, you're going to have guys go to a side session about what it is. Remember the other part of this that's not really being talked about. If you get popped, they're not allowed to replace you on a roster. You're down for 10 days, and you're down a man. That's not easily done in today's baseball. You don't want to be down an arm. So are you a bad teammate if you do it or get caught? That's going to be the next part, is this idea that we have to tell our guys not to do it. Certainly be smarter at it if you do, but we can't have you doing it because we can't afford to lose somebody, you, in the roster spot for 10 days at a time. And think about this. What if 2 guys get caught and there's an overlap of 7 days where you have spots on? In a world where I think the 26-man rotation, they want 17 guys to be pitchers, that would be a really big blow, and I'm not sure teams really could survive that.
Finally, Chris, I know the All-Star break coming up, the trade deadline on the horizon. Do you think Atlanta's going to be in a position where they want to add some potential pieces, or do we not know yet?
Don't know yet. Yeah, don't know yet. There's still a lot of stuff that has to be figured out. And I think it's a big part of it. I joked about the All-Star ballot. I don't even know how it works. I guess if first, you still get a chance to start. And when they do phase 2, I don't even know what happens next. So I don't know how big a deal it is. I actually think that some guys, rather than being reserves, even though it might help them if it's in their contract to make money, I'm not even sure how many guys don't want the days off these days. Like, I'm not sure if the All-Star game is even cracked up to what it used to be, short of if it kicks in an incentive, if it helps you in your next negotiation. I like the All-Star game. I'm not. It's not as much must-see TV as it used to be for a lot of different reasons. I think, again, I'm almost ready for a break from baseball once the All-Star break comes. And I love the game, and I watch a lot of games, but I think I'm sort of ready when the All-Star break comes to get everybody a chance to recharge. This year, it's certainly going to be interesting for the Braves because it doesn't look like it's going to be an easy walk to the National League East. It hasn't been an easy walk to get over 500. I think this year, unless they're playing extremely well going into the break, I think this team and every team in baseball doesn't mind having a few days off.
Chris Dimino joining us here on 3 and Out. Chris, we appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
All right, fellas, listen, always enjoy it. Have a great rest of the day. And by the way, I have a daughter who's going to Georgia Southern starting. She'll be down there starting in August. So at some point, I'll give you guys a ring. When I go take a visit, I'll pop over.
Hey, there you go. Just learn GATA and you'll be all good. So Chris Dimino joining us here on 3 and Out, 680 The Fan, the Braves Radio Network. You can hear him coming up in just a little bit. We'll switch gears. That was a lot to take in with baseball. We'll talk a little college football next. With all that's changed in the past couple of weeks, how does it affect a team like Georgia moving forward into the future? Brooks Austin, Dogs Daily and SI will join us next. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Yeah, so much happening in the world of college athletics. I mean, it's changing by you kind of say that facetiously sometimes, like changing by the minute, but in the last week or two, that really seems like it's been the case. But how does it affect some teams moving forward? Joining us here on the program from Dogs Daily on SI, good friend of the show, Brooks Austin joins us. Brooks, welcome, man. How are you?
I'm doing good, Kevin. How are you today?
Doing fantastic. And certainly in just the last couple of weeks, from the 12-team playoff proposal to the Supreme Court decision, on Monday, we've seen college football drastically continuing to be shaped, name, image, likeness in the state of Georgia next week. I think a week from tomorrow it goes into play. So let's start there with what we saw on Monday with the Supreme Court unanimously saying, look, you can do unlimited education-related benefits for athletes. I mean, how do you see this affecting a school like Georgia, who obviously has the resources to jump right in on some of that stuff?
So it's still a little early to tell. We knew name, image, and likeness was on the horizon, right? We knew it was going to get here as early as this year. The most important thing to me, the one phrase, and I'll read it off to you, that came out of the Supreme Court's ruling and the statements from Kavanaugh was this sentence right here. And this is shocking to me to hear. In particular, and I quote, "In particular, it is highly questionable whether the NCAA and its member colleges can justify not paying student athletes a fair share of the revenues on the circular theory that the defining characteristics of college sports is that the colleges do not pay student athletes." We knew name, image, and likeness was going to be here. We knew the NCAA was going to finally allow these men and women to go outside of the NCAA and make their own money off their own name, image, and likeness. What I never expected to hear said was the Supreme Court to look at the NCAA and say, look, it's time that you start giving them revenue shares. That's something that I never thought we were going to venture into. And you're going to see the NCAA fight this one to the death, because every dollar that is pulled out of net revenues comes directly out of the NCAA's pocket. And that's just something that to me was really, really shocking. I mean, the awards for academic success, that's something I expected to see, right? There's revenues outside of the NCAA that I expected to see. But to hear the Supreme Court say, yeah, you're going to have to give a portion of these net revenues was absolutely shocking to me.
With that in mind, Brooks, are we potentially looking at a complete change or overhaul ultimately to the business model of the NCAA?
Yeah, I think at this point, like when you're talking about like going after the net revenues, I mean, there's only so many cash positive sports in the NCAA. I think the NCAA as it stands, as it currently sits, is gone. I mean, we're not going to see it come back, because if you're talking about giving football players portions of net revenues, that's about it. I mean, at the University of Georgia, for example, I don't know this for sure because they don't open their books this in depth, but football has to be the only cash positive sport at the school. Baseball probably loses money. Basketball probably loses money. All of the other sports that aren't involved with football lose money. So yeah, you're going to be taking sports like football at most of these schools that are cash positive, and the only sport that's cash positive, and you're going to be giving a portion of those net revenues to those athletes and only those athletes. So by nature, the NCAA as it currently stands and as it currently exists will be no more. I would imagine they're going to have to completely revamp what's going to happen, because though the Supreme Court's ruling today yesterday does not directly impact college sports as of now, you know, when these things start to take hold, and if they don't, let's say they don't, right? The Supreme Court has now set precedents that if you take the NCAA to court because of this ruling, most likely the Supreme Court is going to rule in your favor. They ruled in favor 9-0 in and of themselves. So if there are particular lawsuits going after the NCAA, there's now precedence that the NCAA is going to lose those lawsuits. So yeah, we're opening up a whole new can of worms that, again, I never saw coming our way.
And Brooks, when you think about the University of Georgia, when you think about the president, when you think about the athletic director, when you think about Kirby Smart in general, how creative are they going to have to be? Because no matter whether they like it or not, they got to look like they like it, for this perception drives college football. You know how it is. So at what point do Kirby go, all right? I mean, we sit down and break down teams and game plans all the time. How can we as a football team make it look like, even if it's perception, that we care about the other sports? Because as you mentioned, we're going to be the driving force for other sports to get any type of compensation or revenue. At what point does the president and the AD come out and say, look, we kind of knew this was coming because they can't look like they didn't know it was coming, even though they didn't. At what point does the damage control kind of come out and finally say, look, we getting ahead of this thing? Because once again, everybody's watching, and take nothing away from other colleges in the state, everybody's watching UGA first.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a real testament. Like, we know Kirby Smart's an elite recruiter, right? What we don't know is what we're entering into now. Like, I wrote an article about it, and I actually had a segment about it. I think NIL and this idea of a potential percentage split of revenues is really going to bring back the blue bloods of college football. Schools like Texas, schools like USC, schools like Michigan, who this NIL, this name, image, and likeness, to me is going to rely more upon the graduates and the alma mater of your school and whether or not they own businesses, right? If you remember, Georgia is going to be the first school to come out with an actual deal. Brock Vandagriff being one of these athletes that has signed a deal with Onward Reserve, right? Onward Reserve CEO and founder. Where did he go to school? He went to the University of Georgia. Well, Georgia's got a pretty large and substantial donor base, but do they have as many like owners and CEOs of, let's say, Fortune 500 companies, right? Like, take Larry Page, for example, the CEO of Google. He's a graduate of Michigan. Like, that's going to bring Michigan back if he's got that kind of pull, right? I did a study on ultra high net worthy individuals. These are individuals who have net worths north of $30 million. USC's got almost 3,000 of those. 3,000 graduates who have north of $30 million in net revenue or net worth. I'm going to venture to say they own a few companies. And I'm also going to venture to say that some of those ultra high net worthy individuals care about their school's football program, and they're probably going to venture into the idea of making one of their high profile football athletes or athletes in general the face of their company. So to me, it's going to rely more upon that, right? Jack Podlesny, as Christian sends me an email, is one of these individuals that is signed on with Onward Reserve as well. So I'll shout out to the Hot Pod as well. But yeah, I think it's going to rely more upon like what can your alma maters who own businesses do for your current athletes, and that's a pretty big role for schools like Texas, right? Texas has 5 graduates who are not millionaires, they're billionaires. So these are individuals that are really going to get into play, I would imagine, at schools like Texas and USC and Michigan, and even Stanford, right? But you still got to get into Stanford, which is the hard part there.
Brooks Austin, Dogs Daily on SI.com. Joining us here. Obviously, we've gotten into the Supreme Court name, image, likeness 12-team playoff. Seems like it's coming as Christian gets a little dig in there. But Brooks, you look at the 12-team playoff. Obviously, if it comes about, people will say, well, you look at the here and now, that bodes really well for Georgia. Is that dangerous thinking as a program to think, well, even if we don't win the SEC, we automatically got one of those 12 spots? How do you see that kind of playing out?
I mean, until there's a third team to rise up in the SEC East, right? Just the East. You can pretty much pencil in Georgia for the 12-team playoff. And I think of all the schools that are proponents of this expansion, it's definitely Georgia. 3 out of the last 4 years, they finished 5th. They've been that team left out. That's going to be no longer. I think you can, like I said, moving forward, starting in 2023, and I don't think there's any doubt this is coming. The 12-team expansion will start in 2 years. I have no doubt about that. They're going to rush this to the forefront as soon as they can. There's been projections of TV network deals upwards of $1 billion, not hundreds of millions, $1 billion to buy the rights to this 12-team expansion playoff. So, yeah, this is great news for Georgia, but it doesn't make winning a national title any easier. You're still going to have to get through Clemson. You're still going to have to get through Ohio State. You're still going to have to get over Alabama. So, does it get you an automatic bid essentially into the playoff? Absolutely. Unless you go 8-4, Georgia's going to be one of the top 12 teams in the country. I don't think there's any doubts about that moving forward. So you're going to be able to promise recruits, we're going to be playing in January. There's no doubt about that. We're going to be playing meaningful games in January until Tennessee gets back, until something happens at Kentucky, until South Carolina comes back. You're going to see Georgia in a 12-team playoff for the foreseeable future.
We talked about this yesterday on the show. Look, the SEC has depth, and even in a year where there's not great balance in the SEC East, balance overall that is better than most other leagues. How will SEC country, if you will, respond? And I don't know that I'm picking this, But if theoretically, let's say in a couple of years, Cincinnati or Coastal Carolina wins the national championship, is college football ready for that?
No, and I don't think, honestly, BJ, I don't think it'll ever happen. I mean, you're talking about like a UCF team, for example. They're not going to get one of those top 4 bids. They're going to get one of those 7 through 8 type range bids. Maybe they get the 5 seed. They've still got to play 4 more games. They got to play 4 games against perennial powerhouses, against teams that they haven't seen the likes of throughout their regular season. Yes, Cincinnati can get up for 1 game against Georgia in the Peach Bowl and give them a run for their money. Absolutely. But guess what? When that happens in a playoff scenario in a couple of years, Georgia's not going to have multiple starters out. Georgia's not going to be playing as many players as they possibly can as a look forward to 2021. That's not going to be the case. These teams are going to be loaded up and geared up to play in a playoff scenario. It's not going to be Cincinnati sneaking up on a quote-unquote meaningless bowl game. These are going to be playoff games, and you're going to have to win multiple of them to get to a national title. So, yeah, will hell freeze over if USC wins or UCF actually wins a national title? 100%. Is it going to happen? I'm putting that percentage likelihood at about 5%. Now, here's the difference. UCF's going to recruit at a much higher rate than they ever have before, because they're now basically going to say, hey, look, we would have won. We would have been in a playoff the last 4 years, guys. 4 out of the last 6 years, we would have been in a college football playoff. That's going to mean something. UCF's probably going to recruit at a higher rate than, let's say, Wake Forest, because Wake Forest will probably never get into a college football playoff under these current situations and standards. But UCF will. Cincinnati will. Memphis might have a chance when they go 12-0. Like that's going to happen moving forward. So, yeah, is it going to happen in terms of UCF winning a national title? I wouldn't hold my breath on that one. But are they going to, recruit at a much higher rate and be able to get into a playoff every 3 years? 100%.
And Brooks, I mean, all this stuff sounds.
I don't know what Ben was going to say, but apparently he froze up on us.
Yeah.
I think you guys might have lost me for a second. I said all this stuff sounds good, right? 12-team playoffs, name and image likeness, Supreme Court rulings. If you go to Georgia, man, you're gonna benefit from all this, right? You're gonna benefit from the very last thing. But Georgia cannot be the barometer, right? I mean, they get everything, right? What about you being that 13th team out of the 12 teams? You getting, $30 to go to class instead of $5,000. It's not gonna be It's not gonna be smooth across the board, Brooks. Basically, what I'm asking is, how much richer will the rich get because of this?
You got about 30 seconds, Brooks.
The rich been rich. I mean, Ben, you know about this. College football, the powerhouses have been the powerhouses for years and decades for a reason. There's a much higher financial commitment to these schools. The backdoor channels and the stuff that's happened behind the scenes has been able to happen at a much higher rate of bigger schools. Now it's just going to happen in front of your face with NIL and percentage revenue splits. Yes, the big schools will have the power. What I think it's going to bring back is the bigger schools, the powerhouses that haven't been around for the last 2 decades because they couldn't get their ship in order. Now they're going to be able to with name, image, and likeness.
Yeah. Brooks Austin, Dogs Daily on SI.com. Brooks, we appreciate it. Thanks much.
No doubt, gentlemen. We'll see you soon.
And we've got more to come. 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Great to be back here, 3 and Out on this Wednesday. We got a lot to get to coming up in hour number 2. We'll take 3. Could we be overlooking some teams in the SEC West? We'll get to that coming up in hour 2 as well. But appreciate Brooks Austin, Dogs Daily on SI joining us. Chris Domino, 680 The Fan, joining us here in hour number 1 as well. Don't forget tomorrow on the show, South Carolina head football coach Shane Beamer going to stop by. We'll talk some Gamecock football with him. So looking forward to Shane Beamer tomorrow here on 3 and Out. A full hour to go. We're talking Hawks and Bucks, looking at the SEC West, and we'll take 3 on the flip side. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network, streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com. Hour 2, 3 and out on this Wednesday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. So much to get to here on the show. We'll look at the Hawks and Bucks game 1 tonight. Where is the national thinking on this series? We'll get to that. Also, are we looking over some teams in the SEC West, not named Alabama? We'll get to that coming up in just a little bit. But first, let's take 3 here on 3 and Out. All right, take 1. Bill Belichick says he's not a fan of analytics. Says, quote, I prefer good players, good fundamentals, and good execution. I guess I should ask Ben first. Is Bill Belichick the anti-BJ Bennett?
No. Oh, got Microsoft messing up. I would say no. This is why. Bill Belichick is pre-analytics, right? He's the all I need is a good player, right? But the thing is, once again, Kevin, he got all these coaches around him, right? He got all these guys around him breaking it down. And okay, so when Bill Belichick went out there and got Randy Moss, you don't think he knew the stats of Randy Moss? You know what I'm saying? Downfield threats. He might not. Now you know what it is, Kevin. I mean, what's Moneyball? You know, the guy over in the corner, the guy he snapped. He has those guys all around him. But what happens is he don't understand them. They'll say, well, you know, every third down, can he get open on third? Yeah. So BJ, he is an anti-BJ. He just doesn't understand BJ. But BJ is in the room.
Hold on, Ben. You said you think Bill Belichick knew Randy Moss's stats. Kevin, I don't think so. I think Bill Belichick watched Randy Moss and he's like, yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
No.
Bill Belichick never knew a single Randy Moss stat. He just said.
No. That's not what I said. I said you don't think that he knew that the best downfield threat was Randy Moss. Like, dude.
But he didn't need stats to know that. He just knows that Randy Moss is amazing at that because, he watches.
All I'm saying is, I mean, these people are all around him, Christian, and the fact of the matter is, he's not asking his scouts who to go and get without knowing what these guys can and can't do. Yes, he knows football.
I think his scouts, Kevin, were probably telling him, like, yeah, Randy Moss is really good, but, if you look at this wide receiver that no one's ever heard of that plays for the Chargers, his downfield catch rate is much higher than Randy Moss's, if that's what you're looking for, Coach. And Bill Belichick said, get your math the hell out of here. I want Randy Moss.
Yeah, I agree. I tend to see what you're saying. I go ahead, BJ. I'll let you answer because I know you are Mr. Stats.
I mean, I don't like the phraseology of the question. Hey, is the greatest coach of all time the anti-me? Well, what I'm saying is, no, this is what I'm saying.
How many Super Bowl rings do you have?
Okay, right. I understand that, but this is what I'm saying. I'm not in any way comparing myself to Bill Belichick. What I'm saying is, why do they have to be opposites? Like y'all say that Bill Belichick prefers good players with good fundamentals and good execution. So do I. I agree. And I'm saying how, for me, as someone who doesn't understand the nuances of the games like y'all do, I look at stats to help me understand who's good. I think Cody just sent me a message that said I'm the Bill Belichick of the Sun Belt, of Sun Belt knowledge. All right, there we go. But what I'm saying is like, who was it who said that? Bill Parcells. I just look at the stats, man. I just look. And it's not like these stats are the singular, final word. It's not like if Freddie Freeman's hitting 244, that every player who's hitting 245 and above is better than Freddie Freeman. It's not like that. But I do think it can help you understand and kind of frame data in a succinct way. Is all I'm saying.
Well, no, but you just said it too. I mean, but you just said it too, right? Like, I can look at the stat sheet. And these are the people that had the most success throughout the course of the game. That doesn't mean they're necessarily the best players. These are the people that was given the most opportunities throughout the course of the game to go out there and get it done. Now, if the stat sheet said, hey, I had 10 catches for 250 yards and 3 touchdowns, but I dropped the 11th and we lost. So the stat sheet told you what I did, but not ultimately what I needed to do. I'm just saying Bill Belichick knows talent. That's all I'm saying. He can see it. He had Burkhead, who was only allowed to play in the playoff. He had a guy that played lacrosse that never played football. And because I will say this, when they with Bill Belichick, they ball. And when they leave him, coaches included, they go downhill. So I'm just saying Bill Belichick knows talent. Coaches and players. I just think that he didn't have to see Randy Moss' stat sheet to know that you can't.
Yeah, what kind of stat sheet was he looking at from lacrosse player Chris Hogan when he brought him in?
I guarantee
you know what he saw? You know what he saw was heart and gumption and potential. Yeah, you can't measure
Is that
those.
a line on the evaluation?
You can't
gumption.
You can't measure those.
I think that's right next to the 3 cone drill. Gumption rating. Anyway,
Sweat equity.
Look, I appreciate. I do think we overanalyze things. I think we get into analytics a little too much, as opposed to what can guys do. I will say this: I appreciate what the Oakland A's have brought to baseball, but how many World Series have they been to off of that? That's what I'm saying. Well, you could say it's money, not necessarily. The Marlins have won 2 World Series. I think it's a matter of how you have players put together and how they play together inside your organization. That stats necessarily can't tell you. Were the Braves the best statistical team last year? No, but they played really well together and got themselves to an NLCS against the Dodgers. Moving along, I guess it's just a blanket statement, but do you feel bad for umpires? I mean, we're out here having guys stripped down in front of us. You got the on the technology verge of robot umpires. Everybody hates them. Like, do you feel bad for umpires?
In terms of just the principle of the job, yeah, because to a certain extent, and to Ben's point from the show meeting, when it happens to your favorite team, a bad call, very rarely are you going, well, I understand that we all make mistakes, and it's okay because we all make mistakes. That's normally not the visceral response when it happens to your team. But it is interesting that, like, they're expected to be perfect in terms of getting their calls right and wrong, and like none of us, it's like I say things that are wrong on the radio all the time, as Cody tells me in the chat, and it's like right, like in pro baseball, in order to be a good hitter, you're failing 70% of the time, and I understand you're talking about different dynamics, but you even phrased it, Kevin. It's like if you do your job perfectly, most people are still going to hate you and think you stink, right? And if you make a really bad call, it's, oh, you're the worst ever. You're the worst of all time. And you're talked about. And again, are there bad calls? Yes, there are bad calls. Every time I watch a Braves game, especially with my dad, I'm looking going, yeah, that wasn't a strike. That was a ball. But like to a certain element of like, hey, you missed a call here or there, or it was a play where, basically the ball and the runner tie, and you have to go to a replay that you play scientifically so slow that bodies are barely moving to get it right. Yeah, to a certain extent, a little bit. Yeah.
Ben, I don't think Ben feels bad.
Right,
you feel bad for the umpires?
I think I am back. I'm sorry I went slow in there. No, BJ, this it's funny, right? When Florida State played Auburn for the national championship, did you feel bad enough for Auburn to give them the natty? Did you feel bad for them?
To give Auburn the net? What?
Did you feel bad for the Auburn play? Did you feel bad for the Auburn players because they lost?
I mean, not more than I felt good for the Florida State players who won.
No. Did you feel bad for Mike Vick when they lost to Florida State? And in that natty, did you feel bad?
I was happy that Florida State won.
No, did you feel bad for the losers to be like, hey man, you know what? I feel bad for y'all. I want y'all to get.
I mean, I think it's when teams lose in a championship, a part of me feels bad for them. Yes,
I do not feel bad for umps. I do not. Why would I feel bad for them? If you blowing calls, you are not doing your job. I'm sorry. Yes, it's human error, BJ. Yes, I get it, but it is your job to get it right. Like that, you are there to call the game, and when you blowing calls that leads to wins for the other team, that I have a problem with that. I mean, Kevin, I can't remember what up it was this year that blew the call for the team at the play to something that happened, and the other team lost the game, and they go home and go, my bad. Yeah.
I'm not saying I celebrate bad calls. Obviously, I'm just saying that's tough, man. I mean, that's tough.
BJ, all I'm saying is this: every time a player complains about stuff, you know what people say? Tough, do something else. I don't want to hear you complaining. I don't want to hear everybody didn't get it done. Refs, umps be messing it up. And when they do the replay, why is it? Because we're looking at the same replay they're looking at, right? I'm like, that was a strike. But they come out and go, It was a ball. What? It's almost like I'm just saying, don't try to just live with the calls on the. If you mess it up, they go to replay. We got to wait 45 minutes. Go to New York. They don't know what they're looking at either. Then they still get it wrong. All I'm saying is this: it's easy to say, "Man, I feel bad for them." But when it is your team, I don't want to get the text message saying these umps are the worst. Did you see that? Yeah, of course, BJ, but that's a person. Human error is a part of it. Judge it based on your team. Don't judge it based on nobody else. So for me, the umps, the refs, the zebras, whatever you call them, they need to start getting fined because they are deciding games, and I got a problem with that.
Yeah, you're only good if you're correct 100% of the time.
That's right.
Actually, excuse me, 101% of the time.
That's right.
Then you've done a good job if you are an umpire out there. Moving along, take 3. Wander Franco hit a homer in his debut as a rookie for the Tampa Bay Rays, the number 1 prospect in all the minor leagues. So basically now the Rays equivalent of Ronald Acuna Jr. Is there anything a rookie can do in their debut that's cooler than hitting a home run first time out there?
Probably not. It is awesome, and I know the expectations are already sky high for Franco. You're talking about a guy that a lot of people believe was the top prospect in baseball. But, man, when you hit that home run right away, that becomes the expectation, right? Come on, in game 1, you hit a home run. Why haven't you hit 45? And that's one of the things that always makes me nervous for guys when they come up right away and have immediate success, right, is if you come up and your first 2 weeks you hit 340. Well, you know that's not going to be the realistic standard moving forward, but because that's set as the standard initially when you're hitting 270 instead of everybody going, oh man, he's hitting 270, that's really good. Well, that's 70 points less than you were hitting. So sometimes when you have great success right away with your production, that can be really hard to maintain, and it kind of changes the way that fans react to what you're doing. So, I mean, everybody thinks about Jason Hayward, right? And the home run right away and how incredible that was. And that was really special. But for a lot of people, the standard was, okay, well, you hit a home run yesterday. Why not today? You hit a home run last week. When's the next one coming? So, yeah, love to see it. It's really cool. Memories you'll have forever. But sometimes when you have great success right away, it can be hard to maintain that.
Yep. And the guy that two guys that stand out to me, both went number 2 in the draft. I remember RG3's debut. RG3's first game in the NFL against Drew Brees and them. I said, "Oh my God, this dude about to rip it up." And then he met Haloti Ngata, and then it went downhill. But there's another guy that we forget about. I don't forget about him. The number 2 pick behind Jameis. Marcus Mariota first game in the NFL was against Tampa Bay. And I think he had like 5 touchdown passes and like 4 incomplete. I said, "Oh my God." Now I'm saying, "Oh my God." I'm just saying, it's like BJ. I'm just saying, like these quarterbacks. But I will say that this is the guy I always think of, and his career is very, very undervalued. Anquan Boldin had 10 catches for 200 and something yards. And like 2 TDs his very first game against Detroit. 10 for 217. I'm just saying. That's more catches and yards and touchdowns than all the Jaguars tight ends.
He should be in the Hall of Fame. He's got to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, so
you're better off no catches, 0 for 4.
Oh yeah.
You're better off again because you laugh about this. BJ and I talk about this. Jason Hayward in Atlanta. 3-run bomb in his first at bat as an Atlanta Brave, and it was downhill from there in Atlanta. Like he was a solid player, but everybody's like, "Oh my God, he just went deep in his first at bat." It's on, and I mean, give him credit. He is still in the league. He's still getting it done. But in Atlanta, it was never the same as it was after that first home run when Chipper's giving you hugs, and it's the second coming of Hank Aaron and all that. It's like let's slow down a little bit. I think Jeff Francoeur hit one in his first game. As well with the Atlanta Braves. That's take 3. We do it each and every day here at this time. We'll come back. We'll talk some college football. Are we overlooking some teams in the SEC West here in 2021? We'll hit that next on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We are getting close to a 1 month countdown. A week from Thursday, August 1st, will be a month away. And we will be talking about the countdown to the college football season. But as we sit here still with a little more than a month to go, about 3 weeks out from media days taking place, are we undervaluing some teams here, BJ and Ben, in the SEC West? I know everybody talks about Alabama, and rightfully so, but are we simply stopping and saying it's Alabama, then Texas A&M? Are some teams actually capable of being better than maybe we think they're going to be right now? For example, Auburn. I know they have a quarterback, BJ, that you have a lot of questions about, but he will be a third-year starter coming in. And Auburn has made some tremendous hires. Regardless of what you think of Brian Harsin, their coordinator hires have been fantastic. Might Auburn actually be better year one under Brian Harsin than a lot of people seem to think they're going to be?
Possibly, but I do think it's fair to have questions. I think for a lot of the teams in the SEC West, there are reasons for optimism and then reasons for concern. And, it seems like any story of a great season for Auburn starts off with, well, expectations were not very high. So maybe this is what Auburn wants, to be able to be overlooked a little bit in the preseason and then have one of those great years. But keep in mind, you do have a first-year head coach in Brian Harsin. I know you made some great coordinator hires, but normally when you have a first-year head coach, there's a transition. It takes maybe a year or two for everybody to fully get on the same page. And then, Bo Nix is interesting. He's a guy that's won some big games. You go back to the start of his career against Oregon. He's a guy that has played in big moments, but he didn't have a great year last year in terms of his proficiency. A year ago, he was 82nd in the country in quarterback rating. 82nd in the country, and he was 78th in yards per attempt and 70%, 70th in completion percentage. So he has a ways to go to improve, to get to a consistent level where he's regarded as one of the top quarterbacks in the SEC. And again, I like a lot of what Bo has done, but you got to clean up those proficiency numbers a little bit if you're going to be a top 10, top 15 team potentially, especially in the SEC, especially in the SEC West. And the one thing that does worry me a little bit, Ben, about teams in the SEC West is keep in mind the standard is different, right? If we're being honest, you could maybe make an argument that Auburn would be the preseason favorite in the ACC Coastal. But when you're in the SEC West, the standard is Alabama. The standard is Texas A&M. The standard a couple of years ago is LSU. So the standard is as high as can be. And I think when that's the case, the evaluation has to be a little more critical as well.
Yeah, but I will say this about Bo Nix. I mean, went 6-5 last year, all SEC schedule. It's never, ever going to be easy for him. How many teams can say they beat Alabama? And ain't many people can say they beat Alabama as a true freshman. When in 2019, his freshman year, LSU's toughest game was not against Florida, it was against Auburn. Auburn won 27-24. Who was the quarterback? That would be Bo Nix. So, BJ, when you look at evaluations, I go to Joe Burrow, like he had his best year. He didn't have it with the previous coordinator. They had to bring in other people because when you bring in people that specialize in certain things, head coach specialized in the passing game. Your offensive coordinator specialized in the running game. He's going to have Tank Bigsby. I think that Auburn is a team, every year they're competing, not just in recruiting against Alabama, they know who they got to deal with last game of the year. I think we're sleeping on Auburn for the simple fact, BJ, that this is what they do every year. This ain't new to them. It's like they just added Texas A&M, to the slate. So I think we are sleeping on Auburn. Nobody's expecting them to win the SEC West, but could they put could they make it very, very interesting with the slate of teams they got? I would say so. So don't sleep on Bo Nix, BJ, because I think, if he wasn't the guy, they would have got him out of there. I think they think they can get the best out of him when you look at what they add in the run game as well as the passing game coordinator. When you got two people helping one guy with a running game, I think Bo Nix and the Auburn Tigers got a shot to potentially win a game they shouldn't this year.
And again, they're always an interesting team to kind of follow because when you think they're not going to be that great, they overachieve. And when you have high expectations, they kind of slide back into the middle a little bit. So I'm interested to see what they do with Brian Harsin in year one. Also, I don't know how much you take out of 2020, especially with first-year head coaches, but historically, Mike Leach, year two somewhere, they take a big step forward. Do you expect that to happen for Mike Leach in year 2. Now, again, you get 2 less SEC games, so record-wise, it might look a little different as well. 2 less SEC games. Do you expect maybe Mississippi State to kind of take a big step forward?
Well, and they won 2 games to finish last season. I think there are reasons for optimism and questions here as well, too. And when I think about Mississippi State, yes, Kevin, to your point, a lot of returning talent, played a lot of young players a year ago. They're going to be better, but how about this schedule? After their opener, their next 5 games are NC State, at Memphis, LSU, at Texas A&M, and Alabama. Those 5 teams went 43-13 in 2020. And I think you've seen all those teams in kind of preseason top 25 polls. Certainly LSU, A&M, Alabama, and NC State, and Memphis, if they're not in the top 25, they're right there. So that's a really tough standard. I mean, really tough. They will be underdogs in all of those games and double-digit underdogs in a couple of those games. And again, I just go back to the standard. When you're in the SEC West, what might be a really good banner season in another division might be 5-7 or 6-6 in the SEC West, because when you're playing in division, for the most part, every week you're playing a top 25 team. You're playing, on the road in front of 100,000. So yes, I think it's fair to expect improvement in year 2 with Mike Leach. But I think when you look in the division, and I don't know, you guys might have different opinions, but when you look in the division, who do you feel like Mississippi State is inarguably going to be better than?
I don't think it really comes down to who they're going to be better than. Doesn't mean they can't beat them. I mean, people talk about LSU having a bounce back season, where the reason why their season got off to a horrendous start is because of Mississippi State. Like, people could say because of what happened game 1, it kind of like took the air out of their sail. They wasn't able to really recover the rest of the season. The thing about the Mississippi State that makes them dangerous is if they add an inkling of a running game, BJ, to complement that passing game, nobody's expecting them to beat Alabama. Can they beat LSU? Yep, because they already did it. Is Texas A&M beatable? Yep. North Carolina State, I get it. You got a team that's playing well in the ACC. Can they beat them? Yep. Memphis, can they beat them? Yeah. So 4 out of those 5 games, they can beat those teams. Will they beat them is one thing. But Mississippi State is just like Kentucky. It's a race to 6. They trying to get to 6 wins. Nobody's expecting them to win the SEC West. But what happens if people don't catch up to that, if they add some nuance to that passing game? Because Mike Leach is very stubborn, right? He wants to say, I want to win my way. If he's willing to adjust a little bit to kind of like not just have your defense out there because you're throwing the ball all the time, which means you're going, the box score be looking crazy, but look at the final score. I think that Mississippi State, North Carolina State, Memphis, LSU, and Texas A&M are all beatable teams. Alabama, well, I mean, who can say they got a win on their resume with them? So for me, yes, I see them being better in season 2 if Mike Leach is stubborn to not just add some nuance to that passing game with a complimentary running game.
And again, you mentioned LSU there, Ben and BJ. Obviously, we know what happened early with Mississippi State. That kind of set the tone for LSU. There, they had multiple guys to opt out. Are we selling LSU short based on a 2020 pandemic season? And do we expect them, if Max Johnson's the guy or whoever, to bounce right back and be a solid? I mean, everybody's talking about Texas A&M. Might LSU actually be the number 2 there in the West?
I think that's a good question. And I think they return a lot more talent than people across the board appreciate. If you were to make a list of the top, 30, 40 players in the SEC, I think 5, 6, 7, 8 of those players are going to be from LSU. And you're talking about really good quality play at the quarterback position, really good depth. You're talking about a veteran offensive line. You're talking about a veteran defensive line, All-Americans in the secondary. And quietly, I know it was a disappointing season, but quietly they won 2 in a row to finish last season as well. And I know people mentioned that, hey, the end of one season can be momentum for the start of the next season. Well, you go back to the end of 2020, LSU won at Florida. Remember when Florida was in the top 10, and then they put up 53 on Ole Miss the very next week. So I think this is the team to keep an eye on. I think if there is a team that people are underrating in the SEC West, for me, it is LSU.
Yeah, I mean, Durante Jones, defensive back coach, former defensive back coach of Minnesota Vikings, who's going to be the defensive coordinator now, is going to get the best out of a secondary in LSU. I mean, that's how, you're talking about Derek Stingley Jr., BJ. It really, I look at LSU like this. If you can find a way to get that defense to playing, get back to that LSU standard, they're going to be hard to beat. I think the quarterback competition and those guys on offense, it's going to find a way to go out there and be really, really good. I just think that for me, LSU is that team that's scary because you really don't know. I mean, nobody got hit harder with opt-outs and just the NFL than LSU. Like, nobody did. So, and the thing is, just like, we start talking about recruiting, the state of Louisiana has some big-time talent. I mean, big time. And they're going to go to LSU. They don't have to worry about losing them to somebody else. So I just think that for me, LSU is going to be that dangerous team because we really, really don't know. When they had some highs last year, it was very high. The lows started with the first game of the year, but they're not going to have – they don't have to worry about opt-outs. They don't have to worry about all SEC schedule. And they know that while the talk is about Alabama, Texas A&M, the talk is not about LSU, I think they're going to use that as motivation.
Yeah, going to be very interesting to watch how that plays out. And through it all, the best quarterback in the West might be at Ole Miss. Does that mean anything? I mean, is Ole Miss going to be anything more than an offensive fireworks show every week? And just they're either going to outscore somebody or they're going to lose.
Yeah, yet again, another good question. I think you look at this offense and you're really excited. And you saw Ole Miss play some incredible games, even going back to the early season game with Alabama. And I think their ceiling might be a little higher because of their offensive potential. Matt Corral could be the number 1 overall pick in the 2022 NFL draft. I mean, he's a great playmaker. And a lot of people don't realize this. Ole Miss led the SEC in rushing a year ago. So you're talking about an offensive line that is physical. You're talking about backs that can make plays. But, Kevin, to your point, they were 126th in the nation in total defense. There were 127 teams. So the only team that Ole Miss was better than, and I know they played a really tough schedule, but on paper in terms of the stats was North Texas. They were 126th nationally in total defense. So it's kind of like, Kevin, like I've heard you say about the Falcons, you don't have to have an elite defense if you're Ole Miss. But it needs to be at least close to average, and I think that's the question for them for this fall.
You don't have to have an elite defense, but you have to have a defense. I mean, my goodness. I mean, Ole Miss cannot stop nobody. And I know if Mike Leach is going to take a step forward with that Mississippi State offense, and from what I've seen in Lane Kiffin, they take steps back. I don't know what happened from year 1 to year 2 with him. Maybe people catch up to it. BJ, can they play more complementary football for their defense? You're good enough to score, but do you kind of slow up the way in which you move your offense? Because defenses don't go from that bad, that good in a year. Like, it usually just doesn't happen like that. You in the hunt. I remember when my Florida offense was in the 100s, and that is a long season, people. It is rough. Muschamp, and some McElwain days. I'm saying get a first down. Good Lord. It's rough. So for me, you can't get that good that fast on defense in one calendar year, but you can find a way to make your offense complement your defense to kind of give it the illusion that we're trying to keep you guys off the field as much as possible. We'll see if that works, but Matt Corral is about as good as advertised. And once again, we were supposed to go to Florida back in the day. Thanks a lot, Jim McElwain. But shout out to the young stud, Matt Corral, man. Big time talent.
Yeah, there's a quick look at some teams there in the SEC West. We'll come back. It is game 1, Hawks and Bucks. We'll break it down next, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Great to be here on this Wednesday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Game one of the Bucks and Hawks tonight. And where are the thoughts of the nation? We know where Hawks Nation lies, but you look around, man, and BJ and Ben, ESPN, of course, did their panel of experts. How do you think this series is going to go? 15 out of 17 said the Bucks win the series. Now, obviously, if you just look at it on the face, that makes some sense. But you also look at a team that's played very, very well the last two rounds, played well in the face of adversity the last two rounds, something their opponents didn't always do. Are you surprised it's that one-sided? I'm not surprised that more people think the Bucks should win, but are you surprised that it's that one-sided given how the Hawks have played the last couple of series and given how, a lot of people said, hey, the Bucks are here potentially because of a toe, like a minute call might be the reason the Bucks are even here.
I mean, I'm not that surprised. Look, Atlanta did not have many people picking them to win in the first round. Atlanta had almost nobody pick them to win in the second round. Now you're in the Eastern Conference Finals. You're playing, obviously Giannis, who's one of the, 5 best players in the league, and people are going to pick Milwaukee. And if you're Atlanta, if you're the Hawks, I think this is the way you want it because you've played with a chip on your shoulder. You've played with an extra motivation, at least it looks like, this whole, not only the playoffs, but going back to kind of the halfway point of the regular season. You've played with an energy. You've played with a belief. I think, and Ben, you've talked about this, I think these guys trust each other. I think these guys, Trae Young looks around and he sees guys that have made big shots. He sees guys that have won playoff series now. I mean, you're talking about a team that expects to win. And you're talking about guys who step up to the, Clint Capella, what he was saying in the New York series. All right, you want to play physical? All right, let's go. You're talking about Trae Young, hitting shots and bowing. And, hey, the whole stadium is melting down on you, or the arena, boos from everywhere. You're making free throws like it's nothing, like you're in your backyard with 3 seconds left to ice the game. I mean, this is a team that seems to respond to being underappreciated, overlooked, disrespected, dismissed. I mean, and keep on doing that, folks, because it's working. And we're 4 wins away from Atlanta playing for a championship. So look, you deserve to be here. You've earned this spotlight. If I'm in that locker room, I'm not. Whatever. If everybody thinks we're going to lose, let's go. I'm using that as extra motivation.
Why is it when one team do something, it's not celebrated the way other teams do it? The goal is to move on. When Milwaukee's balling, oh my God, Giannis and these Milwaukee Bucks are doing it. Well, this is the thing. Look at the similar pass. Milwaukee kind of had their way in their first series. Well, so did Atlanta. Atlanta should have swept the Knicks. People talking about, Milwaukee won the controversial Game 7. Well, the Hawks went to Game 7, and they won. The problem is this. Atlanta just has Trae. Milwaukee got, Giannis. They got Middleton. They got Holiday. They got 3 All-Stars. One of them be a back-to-back MVP. They should be nervous because it took all of that for y'all to get here. When people say, they played the Nets. The Nets had Harden, and they had KD. Okay, well, Trae them had to deal with, Embiid and sometimes Ben Simmons, not at free throw line. I'm just saying, for me, right? This is talent versus chemistry. Because Atlanta has not been more talented than no team they played, and they beat them both. They weren't more talented than the Knicks. They weren't more talented than Philly, but here they are. So this is the thing about Trae Young that people ain't talking about. If Trae Young's not shooting right, he's averaging over 10 assists a game. He's still making an impact, and you're not gonna foul him late. You're not gonna foul him. Please don't foul Giannis because I want the game to be over less than 4 hours. It's taking a gazillion seconds to go out there and shoot. I think what makes this series what it is the sleeping giant going up against the giant. I like it. I like the fact that Atlanta's saying, man, we're not afraid of you, Giannis, because we're not supposed to be here. As Kevin was saying, they playing with house money, my money, your money, and they're still here with everything they had to deal with. And once again, they're doing it with the interim. Everybody else who you started the season off with, coaches, assistant coaches, got the same one. They got rid of their coach and said, all right, man, we just rebuilding. No, we're in the Eastern Conference Finals. So I know that Middleton and Holiday and those guys and Giannis and Tucker and those guys are not going to make life easy. But if you've been sleeping on them Hawks, you better wake up because them boys can play. They won going away. They won coming back at the halftime. They've been in controversial game 7s. They blew out the Knickerbockers. If that's a sweep. So I just think that the road to the Eastern Conference Finals has been much harder for the Hawks, and I think it's prepared them. John Collins said that my hard work is paying off. And for me, that just shows how far he's come as a player. John Collins has been an all-star before. No more dunk contest though. And I just think that for me, Kevin and BJ, get these Hawks. We're the ones that's waving the flag for the Hawks because ain't nobody else gonna do it. 15 out of 17 national analysts pick the Hawks. Well, how many times did they not pick the Hawks in these first 2 series? Yeah. They still ain't learning.
I mean, I look at it and say, for Atlanta, it comes down to how well you can contain the other guys not named Giannis. Because, I mean, Giannis is going to do what he does. I mean, for all the talk of trying to slow down Embiid still got his, basically it was Ben Simmons who disappeared and some of the other guys. I think that's kind of the similar strategy in this series. BJ, it's, they're going to be looking at Trae Young. Who's the 2? Who's the other guy that becomes the I even hate to say this analogy, the Pippen to Trae Young? Who's the guy that can play off of Trae Young and say they're going to put their focus on him? You have got to have a big game. And I do take some exception when people say the Hawks are talented. I mean, my goodness, at one point they had a starting lineup full of number 1 draft picks. So you have John Collins, number 1 draft pick, Trae Young, number 1 draft pick, Kevin Huerter was a first-round draft pick. I mean, these are guys that the Hawks have drafted in the first round. They are good players. They are just now finally, I think, coming into their own. But who's going to be that number 2 to share the spotlight with Trae? That's interesting because one thing, BJ, you pointed out about the 76ers series, a lot of guys averaging 12. You have Trae averaging 30 and 3 or 4 guys averaging 12, 13 points. That's not really stepping up. That is, hey, I'm doing my part. Who's the guy that's going to jump out? And when Trae gets 30, I got 25 right there with you. So I think that's what you're looking for in this series. And who's it going to be is an interesting question.
Yeah, key point, because I think if you look at Milwaukee, and they have some really good role players, as Ben said, multiple all-stars, but I think that most nights Giannis is going to get 25 to 30, but Chris Middleton is going to get 20 to 25. I think he's averaging right at 23 or 24 points for the entire postseason. Well, with Atlanta, one of the strengths of your team and one of the incredible aspects of this roster is that you've had 6, 7, 8 guys after Trae Young who are capable of scoring 20, 25. And you've seen that in the box score, recent games from Kevin Huerter. You've had big time games from Bogdanovich, obviously Clint Capella. But I think you're going to need somebody to be a consistent, to your point, number 2 that averages 20, 22, can get up to that point in this series. And it's interesting, Ben, because right now for the postseason, Collins is at 13.9. Bogdanovich is at 13.8. Gallinari is at 12.5. Herter's at 11.6. Capella's at 10.3. And then you have Lou Williams at 7 points. Who do you think is kind of best positioned to be that number 2 scorer in this series?
For me, I think it's John Collins. And the reason why I say it is this. Atlanta only has 2 all-stars on their team right now. And that is John Collins and Trae. Because Trae can match what Giannis does impact-wise on the game as far as scoring the basket. Not defensively, and I think for me, John Collins, to me, BJ, is a guy, he's doing it. As far as rebounds, I got to check and say, I think Collins might be double-digit rebounds throughout the entire series. For me, it's John Collins because you need the guy you were building around before Trae got there to step up. People say, well, that's not what he used to doing. It doesn't matter. This is for everything. And I think John Collins has that ability. So for me, BJ, I think it's going to be John Collins because I'm thinking about Giannis can be, I always say, who can X each other out. Giannis's production can be X'd out by Trae. Who's going to X out, who's going to X out Middleton? You're going to have Collins kind of do what he does because I don't know what the answer for Drew Holiday is, even though he's not as great of a scorer as he was, even though he's a great distributor. So for me, I needed to be Collins because if it is Collins and you still getting those role players, BJ, and Clint Capella and those guys, how much better is that going to make this Hawks team? I mean, people saying, hey, Collins, if it was ever going to be a time for you to show up and show out, it's this series. I think he can do it.
And we'll see what happens later tonight. Game 1, I believe 8:30 tip time for the Hawks and the Milwaukee Bucks here this evening. We've got more to come. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Welcome back, 3 and Out on this Wednesday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, thanks for making us a part of your day. Again, we have Shane Beamer on the show tomorrow, South Carolina head coach. We talked about teams that are we're being looked over in the West. I know Shane Beamer, depending on what he can do, he's got a good run game he's walking into, some other work to do, but how quickly could Shane Beamer turn it around there in South Carolina to get them up off the bottom?
Well, I think he's got some things he likes about his roster right away, I would imagine. You talk about that running game, like you said. I think the defensive front, some of the depth you have along the defensive line, among the best in the SEC. So a talented roster. And, Ben, I think a lot of people are excited to see what Coach Beamer can do.
Yeah, Beamer ball, in the SEC East, I'm looking forward to seeing it. But just like I said, when it comes to Auburn football, you got to be able to have that complimentary passing game. You got to have a passing game when you talk about South Carolina because you know what you got in Kevin Harris.
Yeah, going to be interesting to see. I'm excited to talk to Shane Beamer tomorrow here on 3 and Out. So much to come in the final hour. We got some college football lines out for various games throughout the season. Kind of a snapshot look at how people think these things might go a couple months out from the start of the season. Of course, this week marks the 40th year anniversary of a great all-time sports rant. And what are our favorite all-time sports rants out there? We'll get to that. And, of course, Hawks-Bucks game 1 coming up tonight. Going to be a lot of fun to see Atlanta try to pull off that first Eastern Conference final victory for the first time since, the 60s. We'll get to that coming up in the final hour as well. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Hit us up on Twitter at Pigskin Radio. We're streaming live ESPNCoastal.com and live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Good to have you here on this Wednesday, final hour of 3 and Out. Glad you're making us a part of your day. A lot to get to here, including we're looking at Hawks and Bucks, game one of the Eastern Conference Finals coming up tonight as well. But college football always in our thoughts and in the news. And we've got some new lines out for some of the biggest games in college football, and kind of gives you a snapshot this far out as to what people are thinking before fall practice starts at least. And certainly Bama, Miami, one of those week one games, BJ and Ben. Bama 17.5-point favorite. This is a Miami team that people are saying, top 20 type football team, still 3 scores worse than Bama in, according to Bet Online, 3 scores worse than Alabama.
And it feels like a lot, right? Like when you first glance at that number, you go, man, 17.5 points. But, we've all talked about this. Part of the difficulty, of course, is that doesn't necessarily mean that the entire game is a 3-score advantage for Alabama. I mean, I think Alabama's defense is going to be extraordinary. So I think it's going to be difficult for any team, even a really good offensive team like Miami, to score a whole bunch of points. But could I see a scenario where maybe it's 27-14, late in the third quarter and it's close and Miami's had their opportunities, but then Alabama gets a late touchdown in the fourth? I think that's probably the most likely scenario for me right now. Maybe still a tad bit of uncertainty with De'Aaron King and his health. So for right now, even though it feels like a lot, I would take Alabama with the 17.5 being given to Miami. But I do think for most of this game, this is going to be more competitive than people think.
I'll take Alabama to 17.5, BJ, because I go back to, what has it been? 4 years now? The greatest opener of all time when it was Alabama and Florida State and DeAndre Francois. It is going to behoove the Miami Hurricanes to be looking out for the rest of your season. As long as you have no. As long as it is competitive, you keep De'Aaron King in. You do not keep him in just because he wants to be in. This is not the game it's going to be the game you're going to test out his ACL, but I think, BJ, that's why I'm really taking the points, because I see this game getting out of hand maybe like late third quarter, if not before, and then De'Aaron King kind of goes, which means if the best player on your roster can't help you beat him, what you think going to happen to the second best? And don't think that Mr. Saban is going to put in, because even his second string, you can't tell. So, yeah, I'll take Alabama in the point.
And again, interesting to see that early season game, already expecting Alabama coming with a new quarterback, lost a lot of guys to the NFL, already expecting to be dominant against a top 20 type team there in week one. Another week one game, Georgia and Clemson. I know everybody expects this one to be close. Again, according to Bet Online, Clemson minus 3.5. That's in Charlotte, neutral site game. As BJ, you've said a number of times, man, this is probably going to be 2v3, maybe 1v3, 1v2, 1v4, maybe at worst. With one of these teams, maybe a 5, depending on the schedule, but on the early polls. But 3.5-point game in favor of Clemson early week one is where people see this thing going. I mean, depending on how these new guys come in with Georgia, could that change things?
Potentially, and it's tough. I mean, that's a really tough line, because I think if you were to just throw out hypothetically, hey, could you see Clemson winning this game by a field goal? People would say, yeah, I could see that as a reasonable outcome. Well, that would mean Georgia would win, in the betting circumstance here. So if you're Clemson, you got to win by more than a field goal. This is brutal. I think that's right there. I guess right now where we are, because we haven't yet seen, kind of Georgia with the transfers go through a fall camp. Right now, if I'm picking, I think I would take Clemson and just lay the 3.5. But I might feel differently if, Georgia has a really productive fall camp and everybody says, hey, Gilbert's ready to go. He looks good. Kendrick looks good. But I think right now, with just a little bit of the transition, I would probably take Clemson.
I would take Clemson the points. I think what happens is we get so caught up in everything Georgia's doing. The reason why you haven't heard anything coming out of Clemson is because Clemson is Clemson. BJ, where Georgia may have struggles in certain parts, like when you talk about, I know what you add in the secondary. Is a secondary better than Clemson's secondary because of that? I don't think so, because to shore up your secondary, you got rid of a guy who was just at Clemson. I think that Clemson is used to being in this spot opening ding. And I think that Clemson is coming in with something to prove because they feel as though because our quote, entire conference is not going to help us, we got to help ourselves. So give me Clemson the points. I think those guys going to cover.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting, again, to see if that one moves the closer you get to game time, if it becomes a 2-pointer or a 1-point potential spread in that game. Looking at some other big games early on, we talked to Auburn about, are we overlooking them? Penn State, Auburn, I believe that's week 2 or 3 of the college football season. BJ, Penn State, a touchdown favorite at home over Auburn. Maybe give you a little idea of what they expect early from Brian Harsin's club.
Well, maybe. I think it's just that there's some uncertainty, right? I mean, when you're talking about a new head coach, I think there's always an element of the unknown there, even when you have, a coach with an impressive resume and certainly 2 really impressive coordinator hires. I think there's an element of the unknown. And you hear folks say that sometimes when you have fairly evenly matched teams, being at home is worth 3 or 4 points, sometimes on the line. So you're talking about a program that can always surprise in Auburn, but given that you have a new head coach, a new coaching staff, this is one of your first games and it's on the road. I think I would take Penn State and lay the points.
Yeah, I'll take Penn State as well. I think, once again, just like a Clemson thing, I think Penn State is going to be looking to have something to prove. When you talk about BJ having these resume boosters for some of these teams, you're not going to get a better resume booster for Penn State than Auburn. So, yeah, I think Coach Franklin understands that, he's one of those guys that every year people are asking, can you get over the hump? Can you not just compete with Ohio State? Can you beat them? Can you not just beat, Michigan, those guys? So, for me, at home, Penn State, Auburn, even though Bo Nix is going to have Tank Bigsby, give me Penn State and the points to cover.
Yeah, it's a very interesting one there. And again, I've found some of these early lines with Alabama to be extremely interesting as to what people think Alabama's going to be. Losing all that, again, we talked about 17.5 against Miami. A lot of people think their biggest challenge in the West might be Texas A&M, kind of mid-season there. Bama right now 10.5 over Texas A&M, so still a 2-score favorite over a 10-point favorite, obviously, but two-score favorite over what would be preseason considered to be their biggest in-conference challenger on the schedule.
Yeah, I think I still feel pretty good about taking Alabama here and laying the points. I think this is going to be an elite defense. I don't think you're talking about really any opponent scoring 24, 28 plus on Alabama. And I know it's in College Station, great atmosphere, but 2 years ago, Alabama's last trip to Texas A&M, they won 47-28. So they won by 19 points. Last season, keep in mind, A&M was really good a year ago. They only lost to Alabama, and they finished number 5 in the polls. Well, last season, Alabama beat Texas A&M 52-24, and that was with a 4-year starter at quarterback for Texas A&M. So I understand the Aggies are very talented. I get that. And Alabama has some key players to replace, but just given what we've seen the last couple of years in this series, I feel comfortable taking Alabama with that line.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the odds makers are showing a lot of respect to Texas A&M and Coach Jimbo Fisher. This is going to get ugly. You couldn't get it done with a 4-year starter in Kellen Mond, who is still one of the most underrated players, not just college football, definitely. In the SEC West, 10.5. I think it's being modest. BJ, I think this thing gonna get ugly, and it's gonna get ugly in a hurry.
And again, I think
Alabama.
I think that's kind of tells you what you need to know about the West right now. That people think that might be your best game. I know you could say maybe Alabama, LSU, but you're still two scores better than your closest competition potentially in the West, BJ. I mean, that's incredible. I mean, I know you're running out of average adjectives to describe Alabama, but
it's the Alabama standard, right?
It doesn't seem like the gap's getting closed at all.
Yeah, it's the Alabama standard where you're talking about a program that loses a lot, yes, but it's just, say this out loud, Kevin. You're talking about a team that Alabama's offensive line coach this season is the coach from a couple of years ago that had the Jacksonville Jaguars a play away from the Super Bowl. That is now Alabama's offensive line coach in Doug Marrone. And I think when you talk about the talent that's there, the coaching staff that's in place, the expectations, Alabama is just, when you look at it right now, they're going to be 10, 14, 17 points better than just about anybody in the country.
BJ, make sure you keep on saying it out loud. My offensive line coach, my offensive coordinator are former NFL head coaches. I mean, I'm just saying, hey man, you want another head coach job? Well, go to Alabama. That's the launching pad.
Yeah, it seems to be the way to continue the career in a big way. Here's an interesting one as well. Texas and Arkansas playing just a great rivalry situation there in Old Southwest Conference contest, BJ and Ben. But Texas, a 3.5-point favorite over an Arkansas team that was an upstart last year, kind of surprised some folks. Does that say more about Texas or more about Arkansas that game's only 3 points from a team that was in a New Year's Six Bowl a couple of years ago?
I think both. You know, there's some unknown with Texas, new coach coming in with Coach Sarkisian, and then with Arkansas, they have a tendency to play people close at home. You even go back to the Georgia game close in the first half. But I think you're looking at an Arkansas defense that has some All-American type guys. When you look at Jalen Catalon, when you look at Bumper Pool, that's Ben's guy. When you talk about Grant Morgan. So when I look at this one, I think low scoring, defense, special teams. I don't feel good about it. I'll give that qualifier. But right now, if you're telling me the home team's getting over a field goal, I will take Arkansas with the 3.5.
No, I think I'm going to go with Texas, BJ, because I do think Texas is going to get back to running the football. I think they got a sensational running back. I think it's going to be a great – if you love old school football, you're not going to get a better game than Texas and Arkansas. But I think Sarkisian is going to be the X factor with what he did, like pre-snap motions at Alabama. I mean, you might not get a better player at Texas, but you will get an elite athlete at the University of Texas. They recruit like nobody's business in the state of Texas. So for me, I like what Arkansas is going to bring to the table defensively, BJ, but they're going to have to score some points, I think. So I'll take Texas in that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's just interesting kind of where the line sits here this far out. And then speaking of this far out, Georgia and Florida. Obviously, we're a good ways away from that. And they've got Georgia a touchdown favorite over the Gators right now. I know that one's not going to stay that way. It'll probably move around some as the season gets here. But obviously, you talk about the success that Florida had going to the SEC championship game, beating Georgia. And here in 2021, it's gone right back the other way in terms of the odds makers, looking at Georgia as a touchdown favorite here. I mean, you don't win games in June, obviously, but at least at this far out, odds makers like Georgia a touchdown better than Florida at this point.
Yeah, I will defer to the Florida-Georgia Hall of Famer to start the conversation here.
I can appreciate that line when you look at what Georgia has been able to add in the offseason. A guy that was originally – Gilbert was originally supposed to be going to Florida, end up, going to Georgia. You look at what Georgia adds. I mean, that offense, BJ, is going to be about as good as you can get for a Georgia team. Come down to Emory Jones. Going to come down to, can Florida establish the run, which we've been talking about that literally – the last 3 years. I mean, not just the last two, but I think that shows the respect that they are giving Florida. I mean, a touchdown favorite over a Georgia team that's picked to be a college football playoff contender, and a Florida team that's got to still go out there and earn it again. I can live with that 7 points. I'm not, I'm gonna defer to who I'm gonna pick. I'm gonna do that. Because
is there any secret really? I mean, at this point.
You better take the Gators with those points. Come on, you're getting 7 points.
Of course. I mean, I'm gonna need, but I got to see if Dan Muller gonna be wearing Darth Vader outfits, doing all kind of crazy stuff before the game. But hey, I mean, I think it shows the respect. But yeah, I will take Florida with the points.
Right now, I would take Georgia. Kevin, like you said, may feel differently, in a couple of months, but questions with kind of the offensive rebuild to a certain extent at Florida, some questions along the offensive line. I know they're going to need some key transfers to step up potentially. So I don't know that I'll feel that way if the line stays the same, once we get to game week. But right now, I think I would take Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I think that's one of those where you line it up on paper right now and you say who has the advantages. I mean, I think when you start with the quarterback play, I think you would lean Georgia because they have a guy that's played a lot more than Emory Jones at this point. But by the time they play, who knows what Emory Jones is going to be doing in that Dan Mullen offense. But right now, Georgia out there in front. And Georgia, a 9-point favorite over Auburn. Should that be more, BJ? I know you're not a big believer in Auburn. Maybe you're not a big believer in Bo Nix, if I want to be more factually accurate with your take there. But if that's true, I mean, is 9 points not enough here at this point looking at Georgia and Auburn?
Well, what's interesting
about last year, by the way.
Yeah, what's interesting about this series is, much like Auburn is kind of hard to get a feel for, Georgia Auburn is always just crazy. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason to it. So I don't know that I would be real comfortable with a line much bigger than that. If it were 13 or 14, that would make me, hesitant. But I do think if you're saying Georgia's laying 9, I would take that. And again, I want to be clear here. Bo Nix has had some really good games, but right now, if you're going to get to that national level, and I think even Auburn folks would tell you this, you need a little more consistent proficiency. And what worries me right now is those proficiency numbers, at least a year ago, were not there. And I think Georgia offensively is going to be really proficient. I think there's more playmakers across the board for Georgia. Now, Auburn's got some great playmakers in their own right, young guys. Maybe we feel differently about this one in a couple of months. But Kevin, the transition, how do we know? Like, you have so many things about Georgia that Auburn's got a head coach that, if we're being honest, 6, 7, 8 months ago, did many SEC fans know who he was? So I just think there are some unknowns. I would take Georgia.
I would take Georgia, but BJ, I mean, the thing is, it might be closer than we think. I mean, when we talk about coordinator hires, we're not talking that much about Derek Mason. But Derek Mason knows how to coach defense. I mean, and to me, that's going to be the fact that how fast can this Auburn defense get up to speed as far as like playing dominant defense. They can't play complementary defense if Auburn is trying to do the things they might be looking at one and done with a guy in Bo Nix who might not be in the future plans, trying to get the best out of him in 1 year by bringing in a new head coach, new offensive coordinator. So I mean, still taking Georgia, but I think it's going to be closer than what we think, because that Georgia Auburn series always is, like a weird little outcome.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch how some of this develops over the next 2 months as we get closer to some of these games actually happening. We've got more to come here on 3 and Out. We'll look at some of the greatest rants in sports history, and we'll also count you down towards Braves and Mets going for a series win tonight, and Hawks Bucks going for history tonight, trying to win a Eastern Conference Finals basketball game. We'll get to that and more. It's 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Great to be here on this Wednesday, Kevin, BJ, and Ben, and we are always in the mood for a great rant here on the show. We love it when coaches and athletes kind of go off the rails, and usually, a good rant, BJ, it's got a slow build to it, where it's like it starts off all nice and calm, and then just something snaps and it's over. This week is the 40th anniversary of the John McEnroe Cody rant that really kind of kicked off a lot of the famous, just going off. Go ahead, Cody.
Mr. McEnroe, that was a good call. Excuse me?
You can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious. That ball was on the line. Chalk flew up.
I do like it when athletes do that, Ben, when you're like, you can't be, the chalk was moving. Like when you try to explain it like the most simple terms, like the chalk came up, it was moving. And so I love it when athletes, it's kind of, we saw some of those last night, Major League Baseball. Max Scherzer's like, oh, you want to check me again? Fine, I'll just strip off right here in the middle of the diamond. Those are epic to me.
Yes, and the thing is, obviously, they weren't doing it so it to live on in sports rant history. But when I think about sports rant history, I mean, Jim Mora. Look, man, Jim Mora was the man. I mean, everybody gonna think when everybody go to playoffs. We can't. When he went, we couldn't do anything. We couldn't do dilly squat. Poo. It's like because it's frustrating. It's like, look, y'all gonna put these cameras in my face, and I'm sorry, I'm a professional, but I'm not good at answering questions. No, Kevin. Maybe it was. I think it was a baseball manager. What's his name? Like Hal McRae or something. They asked him a question. He started off with, they asked him, you think you should let him bat over him? He was like this. Well, you know what? He started taking mics and throwing them. Do you think I'm looking like a fool? Started throwing. I'm telling you. The frustrations are always very, very high. And they just expect the coaches to be like, next question, please. No, don't ask me this dumb stuff, man. Like, I don't think y'all. So, listen, Jim Mora, obviously, Coach Bennett would be a dog. That is a beautiful rant. It ain't always a bad one, but I just think Jim Mora.
Look, hey, no, Jim Mora, because he was so mad that they were talking about like his team was playing so bad that he just lost it.
Great performance, in my opinion. We threw that game. We gave it away by doing that. We gave them the friggin' game. In my opinion, that sucked. What's that? Playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs. You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game.
I always like that. Then you got to follow that one up with,
we just the Bears are what we thought they were. What we thought they were. We played them in preseason. Who the hell takes a third game in the preseason like it's bull? We played them in the third game. Everybody played 3 quarters. The Bears are who we thought they were. That's why we took the damn field. Now, if you want to crown them, then crown their ass. But they are who we thought they were, and we let them off the hook. That was.
I mean, you get coaches frustrated with their own teams. Those make for epic rants. Also, BJ, when the frustration pulls over, is like, look, what are you talking about winning? We can't even win they just go off. It's beautiful.
A couple come to mind for me, from a player standpoint, and it wasn't, there wasn't any yelling. It was very reserved. But I think Taurean Prince, when he was with Baylor talking about a rebound, how did you guys get out rebounded? Well, a rebound, and he goes through and explains what a rebound was. That was one of the best. But Ben mentioned it, man. When I think about rants, I think about Coach Bennett back at Coastal Carolina in 2011. And I believe Cody has that one. But not only do we need to hear that, it's one of the show favorite rants, but I also have some special notes about that rant as well.
All right.
Trying to get our 2 boys ready to carry them to the golf tournament before practice, right? 12 cats live across the road. Our door's open. Screen's broke. We need to get a new screen door, but the screen's broke. So you can come in through the screen, but you can't get back out of it. I turn and look, there's a little kitty cat in our kitchen. So I said, what are you doing in here, little kitty cat? By that time, the cat turns, tries to get back out. That screen won't go that way. Cat starts going, meow, all crazy. And I told our players, we need more dogs. Bo's barking in the back. I have to go shut Bo up. Mel's like, what's going on? I said, there's a cat in the house. Cat in the house? I said, yeah, there's a cat in the house. So I told our players, I tried to let it out the front door. Meow, meow, the cat's still going crazy in there. And I told our players, you need to be more like a dog. We don't need a bunch of cats in here. Meow, I'm looking in the mirror. Do I look good? I got my extra bands on. I got my other shoes on. Be a dog. We don't need no meows. We don't need no cats. We need more dogs.
I mean, I think that we don't need no meows is pretty interesting. But Kevin, I did some research here. I mean, that is Coach Bennett. But listen, in 2011, when that rant occurred, that became the start of 6 consecutive winning seasons for the Coastal Carolina football program. Now, here's what's interesting. This upcoming year will be the 10th year anniversary for Coastal Carolina of that rant. They will begin the season as a nationally ranked team, which is pretty cool, right? Coastal Carolina, one of the top programs in the country. They will open their 10th anniversary season with the We Need More Dogs against the Citadel, the Bulldogs.
They got rid of all the meows. They have all the dogs.
Listen, rants don't always have to be a bad thing, man. What I like the most about Coach Ben, he's speaking for both people. Cass in the house, me and Bo won't shut up. I'm just telling y'all, when you are a head coach and you got to deal with all these questions all the time, sometimes you just want to vent. You want to get it out, Kevin. People get sick. I mean, Marcus Peters, the cornerback for Baltimore, I don't know what team he was with. And they asked him a question like, "How you like?" He's like, "I don't think we're done yet." He's like, "I don't think we're done." Like he looking at the reporter like, "Don't ask me." No, because what am I supposed to say? What type of question is framed as, "Hey man, you guys kind of sucked on offense today, man. But how you feel about you guys moving forward?" Well, I think we're gonna be just fine. What is your name? Where do you live at? That's enough. That's right. What is it? I'm just saying. What are you supposed to? BJ, if you in there when your uncle Coach Bennett is in there going meow, do you go? So do you guys got any dogs?
I'm saying, dude, I have no idea what you're talking about, but wow.
Yeah, that was a nice one where he just had a fun storytelling. Then you have, my favorite is Dan Hawkins with Colorado, because it's just a slow build. He starts out in the press conference like, recently got a note from a parent talking about how they a little bummed out that Johnny's not going to get to go on the family vacation this year, and he don't get as many weeks off as we've gotten in the past. And he's just all nice and calm, and he's like, starts just screaming, "It's Division I football!" Like he starts. I mean, it's like goes from 0 to 1,000 all at in 1 second, and it's absolutely beautiful. That's why I love it, because it's like a beautifully calm, restrained person to psychopath in like 2 seconds, and it's amazing. BJ, you're laughing. It's true. Because it's off the reservation. It's like, it's Division I football. It ain't intramurals. It's the Big 12. Like it's amazing.
And he's talking to the media. Doesn't he then go on and say, "That's more time off than you guys get.
They get more vacation than you guys get."
No. It's you know you're doing your job as a reporter when the guy doing the rant says, "What is your name?" What? No. Because I want to know who I'm talking. You know me, right? Because they're like, because my thing is these coaches go through a lot of stress. The players do too. Listen, we doing it because it's required, not because you really want to do it. Sometimes you don't know what to say. I mean, Marshawn Lynch is brilliant, people. I'm just saying. I mean, when he's saying it, no, because people like, "It's Marshawn." You think no, appreciate that. Because when you do answer questions, they're gonna use it against you. I mean, what's the guy? It wasn't a rant. The guy that bowls when he got the 300 game, he goes, "Who do you think you are?" "I am." I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah. Well, that guy's the nut job. But no, I mean, I think, and again, but it's true. Eccentric, maybe it's a better way to put it. But no, I think you look at great rants, and they all come in different shapes and sizes, and many people would say that this is the best because it's on fire. It's 100 from the jump, and Mike Gundy just came in scorched earth.
If you have a child someday, you'll understand how it feels. But you obviously don't have a child. I do. If your child goes down the street and somebody makes fun of him because he dropped a pass in a pickup game, or says he's fat, and he comes home crying to his mom, you'd understand. But you haven't had that. But someday you will. And when your child comes home, you'll understand. If you want to go after an athlete, one of my athletes, you go after one that doesn't do the right things. You don't downgrade him because he does everything right and may not play as well on Saturday. And you let us make that decision. That's why I don't read the newspaper. Because it's garbage. And the editor that let it come out is garbage. attacking an amateur athlete for doing everything right. And then you want to write articles about guys that don't do things right and downgrade them, the ones that do make plays. Are you kidding me? Where are we at in society today? Come after me. I'm a man. I'm 40. I'm not a kid. Write something about me or our coaches. Don't write about a kid that does everything right, that's heart's broken, and then say that the coaches said he was scared. That ain't true. And then to say that we made that decision because Donovan Woods, because he threatened to transfer, that's not true. So get your facts straight. And I hope someday you have a child and somebody downgrades them and belittles them, and you have to look them in the eye and say, you know what? It's okay. They're supposed to be mature adults, but they're really not. Who's the kid here? Who's the kid here? Are you kidding me? That's all I got to say.
That's great. I mean, that is like, if you remember the video that like he walks in and is on 100 from the moment he walks in, is like, I'm done, out. It's like, and you can hear a pin drop, and then you're like, oh, I guess coach is mad today.
You got how are you telling people what they got? Do you got a kid? You don't have kids. You don't know what I got. Now, don't tell me what it is. He goes, because you call him fat. Is that what I said in the article? No. He was venting, man. I'm telling you, they don't know what to say. He go down the street and he drop a ball. Well, coach, we talking about him dropping the ball. Did you call him? You called him fat. I did not call him fat, and I do have kids. You don't know me. He also makes $5 million a year. So I mean, I'm not feeling bad for Mike Gundy. He's living life. Best mullet in college football.
And how many people for years will say, "Come after me. I'm a man. I'm 40." How many people have said that?
The editor who let it out is garbage. And the editor's like, I'm the editor who let it out.
Yeah, that is definitely entered the lexicon for sports for all time. Come after me. I'm a man. I'm 40. I can handle it.
I mean, Cody, I don't know if you can do this on the fly, but can you find the audio explaining to us what a rebound is? I mean, that is one of the best because it was just so fluid and natural in conversation with Torian. I'm trying to think who they lost to. They were a high seed, Baylor, and they lost and they got out rebounded. And Torian Prince got asked about it, and he said, yeah, it's a rebound. It's like where you go up when a shot is missed, the ball bounces off the rim. They got more of those than we did.
No. It's just a game, dog.
Yeah. We've got a couple here in just a second. Yeah, that was it was in an NCAA tournament too, and obviously you could tell that he was done at that point. But here we go. Torian Prince said after they got bounced out in March Madness when they got out rebounded by Yale.
How does Baylor get out rebounded by Yale? How's that happen? Are you directing that towards anyone? Gentleman who just talked about getting out rebounded. He had the stat sheet.
Torian.
You
said how do they have more rebounds?
You said he got out rebounded. I was surprised. You did 36-32. How does Yale out rebound Baylor?
You go up and grab the ball off the rim when it comes off, and then you grab it with two hands, and you come down with it, and that's considered a rebound. So they got more of those than we did.
That is beautiful.
Kevin,
well done. Well done.
If I'm in that meeting room, I'm trying to look at Torian and go.
That was awesome. That was so perfect. I mean, well done, Torian.
So, again, just great sports rants in history. We revisit some of those here today. We'll come back, get you ready for Braves and Mets. Some breaking news in that series. Also, Hawks and Bucks coming up. Game 1 tonight as well. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. A lot of action tonight with the Hawks and Bucks. Game 1, Braves and Mets trying to finish up their 4-game series. The Mets have announced Tyler McGill going to go for them. He is making his major league debut. So who the heck knows what to expect, BJ and Ben, from a guy making his major league debut. Braves counter with Kyle Wright. And a little bit of breaking news within the last hour. No Ronald Acuna tonight. Some back stiffness. They're going to sit him as a precaution, just give him an extra day off. So your outfield becomes very weak. Obviously, you lose some explosiveness at the top of your lineup. And the Braves, if they can win, will try to bring that lead down to 3 games in the National League East.
Yeah, it's a big opportunity. I think you look at the middle of the order, Ozzie Albies has been really hot as of late. You've seen his average, come up close to, and it might be a couple of points below now, but it was up like 260 at one point. Obviously, Austin Riley's been really good this season offensively, even with a little bit of a late slump. You've seen Freddie Freeman come around a little bit. I think Abraham Almonte has been a really nice addition to the middle of the lineup in terms of some of the at-bats he's given you. He's had some good, solid production. Contreras obviously has power for a catcher. So I think you're looking at that middle of the lineup that needs to be productive tonight.
I'm going to need the Braves to stick with their winning ways. I'm happy that Ronald Acuna Jr. is getting a day off. I think in the past maybe he would have tried to play through it, and so I appreciate him getting that necessary day off. But Kevin, can these Braves stick with their winning ways? I just think that this NL East, I know how hard it's going to be to win this. And like you said, BJ, ain't no wild cards going to be coming out of the National League East. I just think you're going to have to win this division in order to make it to the playoffs. Can they stick with their winning ways? Back-to-back wins, Kevin, it's not something we're able to say about the Braves in a long time. Can they make it 3?
Yeah, and again, not to be huge, all things considered, if they're able to come through, need a big start from Kyle Wright tonight. Also, the Hawks and Bucks, Game 1. Hawks trying to win an Eastern Conference Finals game. The last 2 times they've been in the Eastern Conference Finals, 0-4. And 0-4. Have not won a game in the Eastern Conference Finals. Chance to make a little history tonight if they can get one in the win column.
And we've talked about this all postseason, but doesn't it kind of feel like the responses are already out there? Like if the Hawks lose tonight, and keep in mind, people normally say a series doesn't start until somebody wins on the road. So, even if you go just off the home court advantage, the Bucks should win tonight. But if the Hawks lose, the response is going to be, the Hawks have already kind of exceeded expectations. They shouldn't be here. They're not going to be competitive.
Well,
hold on.
And it depends on how you lose, though.
No, I mean, kind of. I don't know that I go by that really in the NBA playoffs, because whether you lose by 1 or you lose by 30, you still lost, and it's still 1 loss in the series, and you're still moving on to the next game. I mean, case in point, last night the Clippers lost on a shot with less than 1 second left, and they lost by 1 point. I don't think they're taking any comfort in knowing that, we were really competitive and we only lost by 1 point. No, you're down 0-2 in the series. So to me, I'm not really bothered by a 15-point loss in a 7-game series. I'm just saying, don't be surprised if Atlanta loses tonight, if the response is, the Hawks shouldn't be here. And like Ben said earlier in the show, they beat the number 1 seed to get here. And then if they win, the response is going to be, it's the Hawks. It's 1 game. The Bucks are going to come back. So I think the response is largely going to be dismissive of the Hawks, whatever they do. But don't worry about it. Go out there, have fun, play, put the pressure on the Bucks. You've been a team that has been so clutch, so poised, and I hope to see more of that tonight.
if the Hawks win game one, it will be what they have done in the first two series. They won game one in opening round, won game one, in the second round. And if it's the Bucks better know what they're dealing with, because all Atlanta has to do tonight is figure out what they up against. I don't think the Bucks know what they're up against yet. Like I said, I need John Collins to come out and kind of match that energy, with the Bucks and BJ. I just think that if Atlanta does lose, they will be in unfamiliar territory because they know nothing about losing game one in any series. Trae Young, go out there and do what you do. They're never, ever going to put no respect on Atlanta's name, not because they're the Hawks. Oh, that's right. It is because they're the Hawks, because they seem to love everybody but. All four of these teams and all four teams remaining still trying to win the championship. I don't know how many teams have never won the championship. I think Milwaukee won one, back when TV didn't have color on it. But I just think that when you look at this series, I think the Hawks got good a shot as any, BJ, because if Trae Young can make quality shots, he's gonna get the assist game. And Collins and those boys can do what they do as far as being those role players. I like Atlanta chances, man. I mean, they went through Philly and New York. It ain't like they went through some slouches. But they got to do it again against the Milwaukee boys led by Giannis.
Well, I think a game one win definitely puts the Bucks on their heels. And again, you continue to play with that carefree attitude, if you will, where you can take chances, you can do some things that you probably wouldn't otherwise do if you're in the 0-1 hole, 0-2 hole trying to fight your way out of it.
Yeah, and I mean, you can definitely put even more pressure on Milwaukee, but I think the pressure's already there. Atlanta, in the eyes of most, it's been an incredibly successful season, and nothing from here on out is going to change that. You're just the team that a lot of people think is there for whatever reason. The Bucks are the team that is expected to move forward and make it to the finals. I think play like all the pressure's on your opponent, because that's absolutely the case.
Yeah, 100% the reality situation. We're up against it. Thanks to Chris Tamino, 680 The Fan, Braves Radio Network, for joining us. Also, Brooks Austin, Dogs Daily on SI, joined us back in hour number one. If you missed any portion of today's show, go to our website, espncoastal.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can also go to our YouTube page and check out a podcasted version of the show each and every day. Shane Beamer, South Carolina head football coach, going to join us on the show tomorrow. Really looking forward to that. And I hope you'll be there with us as we talk to Shane Beamer tomorrow. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Conversation continues at Pigskin Radio there on Twitter. Braves and Mets coming up next.